Greetings, Bat Family, and welcome to Holy BatCast, brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. You can find us all over social media on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those places. Just search for Holy BatCast and you will find us. If you're a big fan of the show and you want to support us, you can do that on Patreon. No pressure if you don't want to. It's okay, but it is an option. And for all those patrons out there, you guys are amazing. So if you are interested, you can go to patreon.com/holybatcast. And as always, a big thank you to our patrons. You guys rock. You really help us out. And I hope you know we appreciate it. So big thank you to our patrons. And for those of you who are thinking about it, just know we would appreciate it. We're part of the Real Fans Podcast Network. You can check out all those shows at rf4rm.com. And finally, I am Andy DiGenova. As always, you know that. You can find me on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. It's just my name, Andy DiGenova. This episode, a little random, but fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Something that we've said we wanted to do for years. We've kind of teased it over the years and go, yeah, one of these days, we got to get around to that. Well, one of these days is today. We're going to talk about the 2011 Green Lantern film starring Ryan Reynolds, Jamie's favorite. Oh, I can't wait. And he is here. Jamie's here. So Jamie is joining me to take a trip to Oa to visit Hal Jordan and Sinestro and all those and the little blue guys sitting up on their thrones. Hey, Jamie.
Happy $9 PSL day.
Oh my God, it is PSL day. I got one this morning, actually. I did
not, because they're $9 the way I order them. So
I know. Again, last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, I really switched to the pumpkin cold brew because it's less calories and it's cheaper. And so I have less guilt about it.
My daughter actually sent me a picture. She got a pumpkin cream cold brew today. She's like, look what's back at Starbucks. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll just spend all my paycheck there. Why not?
That's my jam. So you tell her that she has good taste. And on the weekend, I might get like a pumpkin spice frappuccino on the weekend. But
fortunately for me, I still have a gigantic Sam's Club size box of pumpkin spice Starbucks coffee from my Keurig. So I did have one this morning. I just didn't go through a drive-thru to get it.
Oh, that's okay. Still counts. I love that we are kicking off pumpkin spice season, and half of the people listening are like, yeah, pumpkin spice season. I love when Andy and Jamie talk about pumpkin spice. And the other half are like, damn it, here we go again.
I mean, just to segue into it, we went to the grocery store on Sunday, as we're recording today's Thursday. Dude, the Monster cereal is everywhere in the grocery store right now.
Ooh, I have not found it yet.
I mean, all kinds of it. You got like Haunted Lucky Charms, the Halloween Captain Crunch, all the regular, staples of the Monster cereals. Even, Carmela Creeper, which I like, and you and Preston decided to kick her while she was down there.
Oh, I'm going to give her another shot this year because I want to like it. I promise.
Well, I have a secret. You and Preston, I mean, you're communists because you say you don't really care for the chocolate all that much, but I eat all my cereal with chocolate milk. So maybe that's why I like that one, is I do the chocolate milk, which, some people would think that's crazy, but I've eaten plenty of caramel apples that were covered in chocolate and it worked just fine there. So yeah, it works good in the cereal too.
All right. I hope they just tweaked the formula a little bit from last year. And this year I can completely embrace the Carmela Creeper, but I'm going to buy it anyway. So it doesn't even matter.
Well, I think last year you guys talked about, what do they call it? The Monster Mash cereal, where it's like all of them in one box. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that here last year, but we got it this year.
Oh, okay. So I guess that means I got to be on the lookout. I have not found any cereals, but I did get quite a haul of other pumpkin spice goodies or Halloween goodies last week. So like lots of like the oh my God, was it the Pillsbury pumpkin cookies and the Pillsbury ghost cookies, and some Toll House ones that were pumpkin spice, and like an M&M one that was spooky M&Ms. So it has like little bat candy pieces in it, and a pumpkin spice like bread that you can bake. And I got one of everything.
How's the bread? Have you tried it yet?
I have not tried it yet. So
when you made that post, I was instantly into like, ooh, I want to try that one.
Yeah, that one, because I think that's new this year, and so we're gonna have to do it soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. Happy pumpkin spice season, my friend, and for everybody out there, happy pumpkin spice season. Embrace
temperatures
it.
Are even dropping here. Like at night, it's getting down into the mid 40s right now, so it's feeling very fall adjacent right now.
Amazing. Well, You already gave us away and said we're recording this on Thursday because I will still publish it as normal Sunday night. But the reason for that is because tomorrow night, Catherine and I and Harley, we are going to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party.
Oh, is that going in already?
It's already started, and we're going tomorrow. We're spending the weekend at the Grand Floridian at Walt Disney World, doing a little weekends, not a staycation because we're going to a hotel, but a little weekend getaway. That's only 15 minutes down the road, but it'll be fun. So yeah, we're doing that this weekend. So we have to record in advance.
Most excellent.
So yeah, Halloween really kicks off in earnest tomorrow for us.
Fantastic. That means HHN will be right around the corner too, right?
Preview night is Tuesday.
That's wow. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
Yep, it's a big week, guys. The season is upon us, but we're going to have one little taste of summer before we kick into autumn because we're going to talk about a summer movie. And as you pointed out before we started recording, I didn't even realize we're going to celebrate its 13th anniversary. And I think that's somehow fitting.
For this movie, I think maybe it is, yeah.
Because it was a lucky number 13 for this movie. And it was one of those where we missed the 10-year. There was everything else going on. And then I was like, well, do I really want to wait 2 more years? Like, who knows what's going to be going on in our lives in 2 more years? Let's just do it now. And so we're going to go back to 2011. We're going to talk about Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan in Green Lantern. So you ready to do that?
I am.
All right, here we go. It's time to talk about 2011's Green Lantern. Green Lantern was released on June 17th of 2011. It's directed by Martin Campbell, like I said, starring Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan, but also with Blake Lively, Peter Sarsgaard, Mark Strong, Angela Bassett, and someone I forgot was in this movie, Tim Robbins. Forgot he was in this.
I'm pretty sure he did too.
Yeah, I hadn't watched it in a minute, and so he shows up. I was like, oh yeah, he is in this. Score by James Newton Howard, and we are going to do the old disorder format. So we're going to start with our memories of Green Lantern. You can go first.
Well, for those who aren't remembering or paying a lot of attention to previous episodes, Hal Jordan / Green Lantern is my third favorite DC character behind Batman and Superman. So I was plenty excited when the movie was, announced to be in development. I feel like they talked about it for quite a while, and then all of a sudden here it comes. And most of that got taken right out of my sails when they announced who was playing Hal Jordan.
Now, well, can I stop you right there? Do you remember the 3 finalists that were reported?
So I was reading some IMDb trivia, and I know you can only take that with a huge can of Morton's in your hand. Mm-hmm. But I think the names that I remember being tossed around were John Hamm, Bradley Cooper, and Henry Cavill maybe was in there too.
So again, like you said, IMDb trivia, very hit and miss, but I was following this movie with great interest because I, like you, love Green Lantern, and I really love Hal Jordan Green Lantern. And at the time, the reports were there were 3 finalists for Hal. One was Ryan Reynolds, one was Bradley Cooper, and the third was Justin Timberlake.
That's right. He was another. Yeah. So there was like 9 names mentioned on it because like some of the people didn't even audition. Yeah. Like they were just names on, a short list or whatever. But my understanding is, not to get ahead of ourselves, but this was quite the troubled shoot because Martin Campbell and Ryan Reynolds did not get along.
I hadn't heard that.
According to what the IMDb trivia says. Now, again, people, I don't know this. So if anybody knows differently, please, give us a shout out in the email box or something. But my understanding is Martin Campbell very much wanted Bradley Cooper for the role. And the studio pretty much hired Ryan Reynolds and sent him onto the set and said, here's your Green Lantern. And Martin Campbell had no idea until he showed up. And he was so infuriated by this that he made things very difficult on Ryan Reynolds and made him do like multiple takes even when it wasn't necessary. And it was just an ugly, contentious shoot between the two of them.
Well, that's a bummer to hear because that's the first time I've ever heard anyone other than you dislike Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, well,
especially people who actually like know him and have worked with him. Like he seems like the nicest dude in the world, but it sounds like, yeah, there were some sour grapes there.
I've softened up on it a lot, but when this movie was being released, I was at my peak of piss on Ryan Reynolds, you know?
Yeah. A question. Would you have, especially back in 2011, would you have been more excited about Bradley Cooper or Justin Timberlake?
No, because I didn't like Bradley Cooper either.
Okay, well, there you go. I guess it was all
I pretty much have him and Ryan Reynolds on the same stoop, but Bradley Cooper was on Alias, which when that show was on, it was my favorite show in the world. And I didn't like him on the show. Like he was the one thing about the show I could not abide. I know, I'm weird that way.
That's okay. Anyway, so continue. Additional memories.
So, you know, I remember it coming out, and I was such a hardcore Ryan Reynolds hater that I wouldn't even go see the thing in the theater. And this is one of my favorite characters. And, you know, reviews started coming out, and I paid way more attention to that stuff back then than I do now. And I was just like, yeah, this just, I'll wait till it hits Netflix or something like that. So, you know, I don't remember if I rented it when it came out, like on, you know, I was probably still getting Netflix discs in the mail at that point, I think, but I don't know. Anyway, I got real sour on it real quick. You know, I saw some of the designs, and, you know, you see preliminary designs and photos and stuff, or when it's like even a still, they look way different than they do actually in action in a movie. So like, the suit I didn't think looked great. The ring I thought looked terrible. The lantern I thought was abysmal. So there was just too many things pointing in directions that I just didn't want to go with this movie. But then I watched the movie and I was like, that wasn't that bad. What's the matter with you people? This is actually okay. It's not amazing. It's certainly far from perfect. It's got plenty of problems. But as a whole, this thing's pretty true to Green Lantern, as I know it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, obviously we have different variations of origins and characters and things like that over the years. But, you know, I heavily read the Jeff Johns run that started with, what they call it, Green Lantern Rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Ran all the way through like Brightest Day. I think I read that entire run through Brightest Day, and I loved it. It was legendary. It was fantastic. And I felt like a lot of that story and those concepts were incorporated into this film. So I'm watching it and I'm thinking, I get it. It's not perfect, but why is this thing being, you know, curb stomped? It just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Mm. And that says a lot coming from you who didn't want to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's okay. Well, as we already said, I was following this very closely because I love Green Lantern. There was a time where, yes, he was my number 2 after Batman. These days, I don't know if I'd put him quite that high, but he's still, you know, in my top 10. I've just always thought Green Lantern was super cool looking hero, cool powers, cool mythology. So the fact that we were getting a Green Lantern movie was really exciting to me. So I followed the casting and I followed the production, and I was really, really excited about it. And going into the summer of 2011, it's funny, we talked about this somewhat recently on the Real Fans show when we talked about the X-Men films. The summer of 2011, we got 4 superhero movies. And 13 years ago, that was a rarity. I mean, obviously the superhero renaissance was really, truly kicking off at that point, but to get 4 in the same summer is pretty amazing. So that summer kicked off with Thor. Then there was X-Men First Class, there was Green Lantern, and there was Captain America, the First Avenger. So going into that summer, I was all about Green Lantern. That was the one I was most excited for, probably partly because of my DC bias. But also just my love for Green Lantern. So going in, that was the one I was most thrilled about. And so its fate really bummed me out. But I remember the first reveal of Ryan Reynolds in the suit with, air quotes, because he, it was computer generated, but that reveal on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, I remember that. And I remember from that moment, already it was divisive. I had no issue with it. I was like, yeah, I mean, that's unmistakably Green Lantern. Didn't really bother me. But what I remember is that initial reveal it was all green and there was like no black or dark parts. It was just all the same color of green. And so because of the feedback in the final film, they've darkened the parts that would have been black on a more traditional suit to give him more of that look, which I thought was kind of fun that they actually listened and changed it. Um, I remember that there was the Got Milk ad with him as Green Lantern. And I was just really psyched for the film. Here's something I don't think I've ever said out loud, but I can now. I think we're past the statute of limitations. When this was coming out, it was when I was working at WB. And we were maybe about a month out from the release of Green Lantern. And I was in a meeting and someone said, "Oh, I heard that they're discussing delaying Green Lantern because it's not ready." And and I was like, "No, there's no way. There's no way. It comes out in a month. Like it's our big summer tentpole. There's no way they would delay it." And the person who said it was like, "It's just what I heard, like I don't know." And then I think it was reported actually publicly that about a month out, Warner Brothers was like throwing an extra $30 million or something crazy at it to finish the special effects. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah.
I did read about the $30 million on special effects on the trivia thing today, but I didn't hear that going into it. No.
Yeah, I think that was actually publicly reported of like, oh, they're trying to finish it in time and they're throwing all this money to try and get it done. So I remember just being like really in disbelief of like, there's no way they'll delay it. There's no way. And then they didn't, but the fact that they then committed all that extra money means that it really was discussed. So I'd like to apologize to my coworker who I didn't believe at the time. But what I remember then is because I was working there at the time, we went to a screening of it on the Warner Brothers lot. And so that must have been, a day or two before it opened. And so we'll get into overall thoughts of the movie. But as we know of the 4 superhero movies in the summer of 2011, Green Lantern certainly did the worst. And again, it still kind of stings as far as I'm concerned. But you've already kind of shared. Oh, sorry. This just goes into the promotion. As they got closer and closer to release, they started doing something that is always a bit of a red flag. And I don't know if you remember this, is they started releasing like scenes online. Like not just extra trailers, but like full scenes.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember that too. Because remember, like the Amazing Spider-Man 2, they started doing that same thing before it came out.
Where yes, we were like, I do remember it with that because that was another one I liked to dogpile on before it came out.
Yeah, but Green Lantern, they started doing the same thing. The week leading up, they like released these scenes, and I was so excited. I watched them all. But anyway, yeah, that was just another interesting. It was an interesting strategy. So
now, when they released the photo of the suit, now it's been a while, so my memories are hazy, but wasn't it kind of translucent so you could like see his feet through the suit and just like it looked kind of weird in that sense, and I think people were put off by it. And again, I was so angry about Ryan Reynolds playing this character that I think I jumped on any reason I could to hate this movie prior to its release. So I was part of the problem back then. So.
You could kind of see the shape of his feet, but not his actual feet. So like, and I tried to think of where that full body shot would have been. I'm actually going to send you the EW cover because it's actually very easy to find. So you can see what that very first reveal looked like. And again, I saw this cover and I went, oh, awesome. Great. Looks like Green Lantern. I can't wait. And a lot of other folks were not so into it.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember thinking, man, those like almost like a rib design going through the suit with the lines and stuff. I don't know. Looking at it now, I think, yeah, that looks pretty good. But looking at it back then, I was like, F this movie. So,
but do notice how like it's all kind of the same shade. It didn't really have the black highlights the way the final film does.
Yeah, unless they're kind of, well, no, they're not really shaded out, are they?
Yeah.
No,
so
yeah, I guess you're
there
right.
You have it. Everybody at home can can Google it on their own time. But anyway, point is, I remember it coming out, having a okay opening weekend. And then I also remember the second weekend, it just like plummeted like 70% or something crazy. And that was all she wrote. But that is how, that's how it did. Like you said, the reviews, the reactions were not particularly positive. But we're 13 years removed. How do you feel about the movie overall? You already kind of shared how you felt then, going,
Yeah,
you know
and
what? It wasn't so bad.
no, and I've only watched the movie. I think watching it last night and this morning, I think was the fourth time I've ever watched it. So it's not one I watch regularly, but my opinion has never really swayed on this movie. I still think it's pretty good. Is there a better Green Lantern movie to be made? Absolutely. Is there a worse one? Hell yes. So it's really kind of middle of the road. It has some problems, but uh, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it has moments where the editing and some of the things just make it feel a little choppy.
Mm.
I don't
We'll
think.
talk about that.
Yeah. Martin Campbell has directed some fantastic movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the fact that he was attached to direct this movie was a reason I should have been much more excited about it. But it just didn't feel like it was very well directed. And that's not something I like saying about Martin Campbell, because he's directed some movies that I think are just absolutely fantastic. So I don't know where the problem was. Again, the IMDb thing talks about, the studio hacked the thing to death and, all this other stuff, which, if they were in that much of a rush to get it finished up, I guess maybe that might be something, where there's smoke, I guess. But, I think the characters are mostly pretty spot on to where they should have been, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
The visual effects, a lot of people like to gripe about that stuff. I don't really like griping about it so much anymore, but I can see where they maybe seem a little flimsy in some parts. But again, I don't think, like the Green Lantern, himself doesn't look bad. The whole core, I think, looked really good. Some of the stuff with Parallax maybe could have looked a little bit better, I suppose. But and I remember most people's chief complaint about the movie was just trying to stuff it too full. And in the beginning, I was kind of with that. It's like, yeah, you've got the, Sinestro kind of developing into who he's going to become. You have Parallax, you have Hector Hammond. You have all of these things going on, and maybe they should have cut like maybe Hector Hammond out or Parallax out, something like that. And I always said, yeah, I think that I see that. But watching it this time, I really didn't feel like it was too packed with that stuff to make a coherent or quality film. I just think some of the things with various characters throughout the film were shortchanged because of editing or rushing through a scene or what have you. But again, I feel like they're who they're supposed to be. Like the Guardians felt pretty much like the Guardians that I read in the comics. Hal, whatever problems I may have had with Ryan Reynolds, feels mostly like what I think Hal would feel like. Carol. Okay, let me just get this out of the way. Blake Lively is a beautiful human being, but she's not a very good actress. And that part I've never gotten over in all the times that I've watched it. So I don't really, I see why she was cast, but at the same time, I think there was a better choice to be had out there. I don't know. I feel like all the pieces were there. There's just something in the execution fell short of making it the movie that it should have and could have been. I guess is the way I would put it.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, we agree. Back in 2011, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I walked out of that screening on the studio lot being like, I had fun. I enjoyed it. That was good. And I'm sure part of that is that I was just so excited to get a Green Lantern film. And I'm sure that part of the reason now in 2024, I still don't mind this movie is because I have a Green Lantern movie. But I walked out really enjoying it in 2011. I went and saw it in the theater multiple times, and it broke my heart that it took the beating that it did. Even then, I felt like some of the complaints were valid, but I also thought that some of the piling on was pretty unfair, and I still feel that way, honestly, because there is a lot to like about it, but there's also a lot to not like about it. So watching it again, finally, I watched it a lot when it was new. Because I was just so happy to have a Green Lantern movie. So I watched it in the theater. I watched it when it came home. I watched it a lot that first year. I haven't gone back to it probably since then, probably since 2012. And rewatching it, number one, I was surprised at how much I did remember because I must have watched it a lot when it came out. But but I think that the things that frustrated me and the reasons that people don't like it, they frustrate me even more now than they did then, because we've seen it done so much better by other films and other directors and all that. But I still don't hate it, and I still had a good enough time watching it. But I think that you hit on what I think, and I think it's probably the most salient point, is all the ingredients were there. They had everything they needed. And we just talked about this recently with the Fantastic Four movies from 2005 and 2007. They had all the right ingredients, but it just didn't come together. And I feel exactly the same way here. They had a great filmmaker. They had a great cast for the most part. I mean, you can certainly quibble with some of the choices, but mostly a great cast. They had a great composer. They had a massive budget. They had everything that they needed to make this a hit. I think that where it's let down is in the script, but there are 4 credited screenwriters. So it also seems like it was a script that was passed from writer to writer, where it kind of lost its way with each rewrite. And so I think that's what's so frustrating. And then to your point, the mythology of Green Lantern, the rest of the core, Sinestro and Kilowog and Abin Sur and the Guardians, it's shocking how faithful they are. Tomar Ray, that's the name I was blanking on. It's shocking how faithful they were able to recreate all those characters. And I think that's the strong part of it. I just think the story they chose to tell isn't the greatest, and we can talk about why in just a minute. Mm-hmm. But I think that the point is valid, that they tried to do too much. And whenever we talk about Aquaman, we say that was an Aquaman movie where they're like, hey, we might never get another chance, so let's get everything we can in. But in the hands of a filmmaker like James Wan, he makes it work. This is trying to do that, but not pulling it off.
Yeah.
This is the cautionary tale, whereas Aquaman is the proof that you can pull it off.
And I kind of had that in mind as I was watching it this time, in that we talked about that, especially with James Wan. It's like, you don't know if you're going to get a sequel, so don't save anything back. Take your best shot you can. And I was watching it in that perspective. I'm like, well, this is why Parallax was here. This is why Hammond was here. This is, Sinestro being developed, which, a lot of people said they should have just started off with Sinestro because that's like his main guy. And I'm not going to say that would have been a wrong choice, but what some people seem to forget or don't realize, Sinestro started out very much like he did in this movie. He was a Green Lantern. He was one of the best of the Green Lanterns. He was basically the field commander of the Green Lantern Corps, and eventually got to the point where he felt like they weren't able to do enough. So he wanted to find a way to elevate his abilities to do it. And they didn't approve of what he did. So he broke off and did his own thing. And I feel like this movie was perfectly leading that up for a sequel that we unfortunately never got.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think I can see both sides, because I think you're right. Like, they really do set up the world well, and really building Sinestro as this dangerous ally was you understand why they did it, because they were building a franchise. But again, it becomes a cautionary tale of when you save your best stuff for the sequel that you aren't guaranteed, then we never get to see it. Mm-hmm. And because I know a lot of people who walked out of this movie. Michael Lyons, I remember him saying that. He goes, it was okay, but, and we're going to speak freely, it's 13 years. But at the end, when Sinestro put on the yellow ring, I thought, now that's a movie I want to see. And I don't think he was alone in thinking that. I think a lot of people thought that. A lot of folks were like, I didn't love it, but I would like to see the movie they were teasing at the end.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So yeah, it's really tricky. And so again, it's a bit of a frustrating watch, because for everything they get right, they get something wrong. And so I'm just kind of torn, but I still enjoy it well enough. But I do think something that you said that was interesting is, like, allegedly the studio, hacked it up. I don't know if that's true. I have no idea. But frankly, the issues I have with the story are not that. I feel like the material that is still in the movie is the movie they made. And so I don't know if that's what ruined it, I guess is my point. But I know that you and I both watched the extended edition, correct?
Yes, yes.
So yeah,
And telling you what the differences are, I probably couldn't because I've seen the theatrical version once, and then I bought it when it was released as the extended version, and that's all I've watched since. So,
well, the extended edition is, gosh, I think it's like 6 minutes longer. It's not that extended. The biggest difference is just the prologue of Hal as a child with his dad.
okay.
That's the biggest thing that was added. And then there's some additional dialogue between Hal and Carol towards the end. And there's additional dialogue between Hal and his nephew. It's really those three scenes, and it's all just dialogue, like aside from the prologue with the dad. So yeah, so I still think the extended edition is a better version because it just feels a little more full because you have a little more of those character moments, but it's not drastically different, honestly. What's funny though is I own both. I own the theatrical and the extended, and they're two separate movies in iTunes.
Yes.
But their artwork is swapped. So the theatrical has the artwork for the extended and vice versa. So I thought I started playing the extended, and as I was watching it, it didn't cut to him as a kid with the dad. And I was like, no, wait, where's that part? And I realized that whoever manages the data over at iTunes had swapped the cover art. So
sometimes they get really screwy because like sometimes I'll look at movies and they'll be like in like Asian writing, like Japanese or French or something like that. And I'm just like, what movie is this? And I have to read the little scroll underneath it to figure out what movie it is. Because I don't recognize the words and such. But Berlanti and a couple of his guys wrote, I don't know if it was the first draft or the final draft or what it was, but watching it this time, I also felt this feels a little, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful tone because I liked more of it than I didn't, but a lot of it did feel kind of Arrowverse-ish in the way that it was done. Mm-hmm. And I question whether or not somebody with a little bit, and I don't know what Berlanti's resume is outside of the television stuff. So if he's done, some really good theatrical stuff, my bad. But maybe if they would have had a more adept film writer than TV writer doing this, maybe that would have helped and benefited that a little. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing on, ways that could have shifted it toward the movie that we were hoping and wanted.
Well, so I believe Greg Berlanti did the initial script, and it's the script that they bought. And I have talked to people who have read that script. I think it's available if you search for it. But I didn't make you read it for the homework, so you're welcome. But yeah, so it's out there, and my understanding is it's a very good script. Okay. But again, and I think Berlanti has even politely distanced himself from the final movie because they changed so much of it. And again, you ended up with 4 credited screenwriters. So
well, I read it, isn't it the ampersand means they wrote it together? And if it says "and," it means it was a completely different thing?
I don't know if that's
because okay. So my understanding is when you see a writing credit in it, if it's the N ampersand symbol, it means that those 2 or those 3 worked on the script together and submitted the same thing.
Okay.
But if there's an "and" spelled out, that's a whole different rewrite or something along those lines. So if you look at the writing credit as it's presented at the end of this film, it's Berlanti and Guggenheim and somebody else with the ampersand between it. And then there's an "and" with that other person beneath them.
Okay.
Like maybe they turned in the initial draft and then this other person went in and did the rewrites, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't know. I figured you'd know more about that than me.
Yeah, that one I'd have to Google if I'm being honest. But I do know that initially, like Berlanti, this was trying to set up a universe. And my understanding is like Clark Kent had a cameo in the Berlanti script, and they did more nods to the greater DC universe.
The IMDb thing did, and 2 different people put this in. So I don't know if that makes it right, but I feel like it increases the chances that when Abin Sur's ring is out searching for a lantern, it goes by Superman and stops for a second. And then moves on from him.
Interesting. I could see that. Yeah. And again, I'm sure I'm sure I could find the script and we could confirm it. But yes, like I remember hearing that of like that there was a little more nods to the greater DC universe initially. Um, but anyway, all that aside, it's, you know, Berlanti did a lot of amazing work, especially considering it was on the CW. And so I kind of give him the benefit of the doubt on this one.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't trying to disrespect him. It's just
Oh, I know that.
sometimes you have a difference between a television writer director and a film writer director.
Yeah,
Not
yeah, yeah,
always. Sometimes
yeah.
they can bridge the gap beautifully. And I'm not trying to say Berlanti can't. This feels like it could have been an extended TV pilot or a mini series on the CW just as much as it could have been a theatrical release movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah.
the feel of it. I can't even get my finger on the pulse. You're better at that stuff than me, but I can't place why. But watching it, I just kind of felt, it was kind of TV ish.
Okay. Well, I will say for $200 million, there are parts that feel very cinematic and very epic, and you can see where the money went. Pretty much anything on Oa. But when they're on Earth, it does feel strangely small. Like, towards the end, the big climax when Parallax is invading the city, it seems like we just see one street in that city, and it does feel strangely small considering how much money they had to spend. And you compare that with something like Man of Steel, the finale there, where it is so huge, it's so cinematic, it's so epic. Some people would say too much, but not you and me.
Mm-mm.
But if you compare those two, yeah, this Parallax invasion, it's like one street in this nondescript city, and it feels oddly small. And I remember thinking that even when it came out, because Martin Campbell, he certainly can make big epic films. That is certainly within his talents. And so I don't know if it was his director of photography that wanted to keep things tighter. I don't know, but there are scenes that should have been bigger and more epic that for some reason feel small. Like even the dogfight scene towards the beginning, that feels oddly contained, and it's freaking jets flying around.
Yeah. And I guess another thing I want to point out, and I know a lot of superhero movies, especially toward the beginning, kind of had this thing going on, and that is you don't get the hero in the costume until basically halfway through the film. So I actually checked the clock. So in the extended version, you get a little bit of him, Green Lanterning, but when he actually sets foot on Oa, which is where it really kicks into gear.
That's where he suits up.
Yes. 46 minutes into a 2-hour runtime.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And all of that leading up to it. And again, there's things going on. I'm not saying it's boring to that point, but you're developing Hal's character and, getting the sympathetic thing and the relationship with the family and with Carol and, what happened to his dad. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but here's my thing. And this is probably not going to get me on a lot of people's Christmas card list, but maybe you'll back me up on this. I feel like this movie would have been better served doing what the Daredevil movie did. Where you kind of have him in a little bit of a pickle, and then you flash back to what led him to this point.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can almost do like, Daredevil kind of does it in a segmented montage, if you will, and get you sped up in a big hurry so that you're not waiting around for that origin to really take place. And, some people, I guess, would argue that the development is necessary. And I don't know. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a writer. I can't say, but there is so much that you had to do with him being Green Lantern and training with the Corps and the test pilot stuff. I mean, these things take a while to get done, but I feel like if you would have done it that Daredevil style, you could have probably done a lot of that in about 6 minutes.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting note. And I do think that, I'm sorry, I keep using this as an example, but like that's something James Wan did really well with like the Aquaman films is he knows when to condense time because you've got to move things along to using montage or jumps in time or, just creative editing to kind of get things moving. And you're right. That would have been an interesting strategy to try to do it here. I was surprised because I did exactly like you. I looked at the time when he showed up on Oa, which is the first time he fully suits up. And I was like, oh, that took longer than I remembered. But the theatrical cut, most of that stuff that they cut is to get him to Green Lantern quicker. So
Mhm.
maybe that was a test screening thing. Who knows, right? But my memory was he's Green Lantern pretty quickly, and I was surprised that it took as long as it did because I don't know. I feel like the movie moves. I don't think I don't think it ever lags. I think if if anything, it moves maybe a little too fast, and it doesn't always give you time to settle in and enjoy yourself. And I just wonder if that was intentional with the theatrical.
Well, this is maybe just the entertainment value hound in me. And again, I appreciate character work and all that, but entertainment is the thing with me. It's always my number one thing. A movie has to be entertaining. And I'm not saying this movie isn't entertaining to the point where it leads up to him being Green Lantern. It mostly is. But for me, for my money, I would have liked to have spent way more time with him training on Oa with the rest of the Corps than I would have leading up to that moment.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree with
That is the one thing. If I'm going to say this particular aspect of this film is terribly shortchanged, it's that because Kilowog's on screen for what, 4 minutes in this movie, maybe.
that.
And Kilowog is a huge thing because he's the one that trains the new recruits.
Mm-hmm.
And then he jumps right from Tomar Ray to Kilowog to Sinestro, and the whole thing is less than 10 minutes. I know it's less than 10 minutes.
Well, and in movie time, it seems like he was only there probably a couple hours.
Yeah.
At most. So you're right. No, I absolutely agree with that, and I think that sequence, frankly, it's one of my favorite parts of the movie. But yes, it's like very quick, and it leads to one of my issues with the movie is that Hal Jordan, a man without fear, the cocky test pilot, man, he is an awful defeatist. And I think that's one of those things that I find very frustrating when watching the movie is like what a defeatist he is, because that just doesn't feel like Hal Jordan to me. Like the fact that Sinestro kicks his ass in training on his first day and he quits and he's like, "No, you picked the wrong guy. I'm not the guy for this." I'm like, "Who are you? That's not Hal Jordan."
Yeah, I do feel like Hal would have kind of, picked his balls up and swung him at somebody over that.
Right. Like and I just feel like there's quite a bit of that in this movie. And here's the thing. I love that they decided, to really make the core of the movie about what it truly means to be without fear, right? Because that's the job description, right? A Green Lantern is fearless. And I like the idea of it. It's like, oh, you're not fearless because you don't feel fear. You're fearless because you do feel fear and you can overcome it, and therefore you're courageous. And I thought that was like a really great angle to take.
I agree 100%.
But it's so clumsily handled. And like that's a perfect example of Sinestro kicks his ass. Well, no shit, it's your first day, dude. And he's like, "No, I quit. I'm not very, I'm the wrong guy for this." And like the fear thing, we thought they said fear a lot in Batman Begins. They say it twice as much in this, and it's kind of beats you over the head with it.
Yeah.
And again, it's something I find a little bit frustrating.
No, I see where you're coming from with that.
And I'm going to talk about things that I like too, but as long as I'm talking about things that frustrate me, my other frustration is the Hal and Carol relationship. And I think Blake Lively's fine. I don't feel strongly one way or the other than, yeah, she's a beautiful human being. And you know what? If Green Lantern did nothing else, it brought these two sexy human beings together so they could be married and live happily forever. But
I'm not a baby stalker, but I'm pretty sure those two are going to make some pretty good looking kids.
I mean, they already have kids, but
they got like four of them. I'm just saying, I'm not like out there hunting down people's baby pics and thinking, yeah, in 15 years, that's going to be wow.
Exactly.
But those two together should do pretty okay, I think.
For sure. And I think she's fine in the movie, but God, like the script does her no favors because the script makes her such a nag and she's just so mean to Hal all the time.
Well, I mean, they're trying to make her the responsible one, but not really with any authority behind it, is kind of how I felt about it.
Well, and that's just it, is like, it's okay to be at odds and that can be cute, but like sometimes you have to show us that they actually like each other. And the movie just there's at least 3 scenes where they get together They almost kind of start flirting. One of them says something that offends the other one, and then they both leave mad. And it happens multiple times in the movie. And it's like, yeah, we've already seen this. Like they're the romantic leads. Show us that they like each other.
That is pretty important in a relationship.
So like they're like the cute part when they're dancing in the bar. I think it's a nice scene between the two of them, and she's like, what happened up there? There's nothing wrong with the plane. He's like, thanks for the dance, and he storms off. And then there's the moment where he's when he reveals himself as Green Lantern, and he's like, well, I kind of quit, and she's like, well, okay, take me home. And like, and then they're fighting through the whole movie. So at the end, like them being together or looking out for each other, you're like, did you guys ever like each other? So I know that's where I said the script lets them down is the relationship between the two of them, and just a lot of the characterization of Hal. Not all of it. Some of it's great. Like one of my favorite things about this movie and this version of Hal is when he sees the spaceship crashed and he sees that there's someone in it. I
Right.
love
Jumps right into action to try and save him.
exactly. Doesn't even hesitate, runs straight for that ship because he knows somebody needs help. I'm like, that's Hal Jordan. He didn't once think, oh my God, it's on fire, it could be dangerous. He just jumps into action. And I think that's such a nice unspoken character moment. And then it happens again. There's something similar that happens later in the movie. I can't remember exactly what moment, but it was one of those where he was just like, he doesn't think and he immediately jumps into action. And I was like, yes, like that's who he should be.
Right. I fully agree with that. And I actually think that was one of my favorite moments in the whole film.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up. So Blake Lively, again, I've kind of already made my thoughts known there, but I feel like her character, Carol's best line in the movie is where he's outside of her window and she opens it up and she recognizes him as Hal. And he's like, wait, it's me? And she's like, I've seen you naked. Do you really think that I'm not going to know it's you because your cheekbones are covered up?
Yeah.
And I was like, that was a pretty clever line. So according to the IMDb trivia, she ad-libbed that. That wasn't even in the script.
Oh, nice. That's fun.
So to her credit, I think she gave her character's best line in the whole film in that moment.
Yeah, that's fun. I like that. Going back to the beginning, there's the intro, the big intro with the voiceover, and we get kind of the crash course in Green Lantern mythology. I think it's very cool. I like the music. I will say overall, I like the score. I think James Newton Howard's score is very good. And I like the visuals, and man, like I appreciate them not easing you into the cosmic side of Green Lantern. They're just like, no, this is it. Get on board from the first moments. But it also feels like a studio note of like, that didn't used to be there and people were confused and they're like, okay, I guess we'll just explain it all at the beginning through voiceover.
Could be.
Because it is like, it's a lot, about the immortals, and they harnessed the green power of will and they divided the universe up, and it's a lot for comic book nerds. I'm sure it's like, we're like, yeah, of course, duh, we know this. I do wonder if there were casuals who came in to see a fun superhero movie and they're like, wait, what are you talking about? But again, I think it's cool looking and I like the music, so I dig it, even though I feel like it's redundant exposition.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, we get Tamira Morrison. Speaking of
I always dig him.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best as Abin Sur. So I think that's pretty cool. And you mentioned earlier, we were talking about the suit, the Green Lantern suit. And again, to me, I thought the logic was very sound that, well, if the ring creates the suit would be made of energy. So making it CG to me just made sense. And I appreciate that every Green Lantern suit reflects the physiology of that species.
Mm-hmm.
So like Hal's suit, it looks like musculature, like human musculature because he's human. Whereas Kilowog's, it's a much different texture and a much different look because of his race. And Tomar Ray, it almost looks like scales because he's kind of a fish type alien. And again, I thought that was quite clever. I was on board for that. I know not everyone was, but I thought that was kind of neat how the suit reflected the race of the Green Lantern.
Well, speaking from an automobile perspective, the only problem I would have with that notion, and what you're saying makes sense. Yes, the it creates the suit, so it's energy, not cloth. Except for these rings have a very finite time that they can use the power. So if it's doing that, it's just burning up power for no reason that he could be using to help people or fight or fly or something like that. So the logic, I don't know how well it holds true with that. And they didn't really get into a lot of, the rings wearing down in power. I expected that would have come in a sequel or something along that line. And he did have to, charge it up, I think at least
Couple
once.
times,
Yeah.
couple times.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to push up my glasses
Okay.
and say, well, actually, the Green Lantern ring, it charges for 24 hours, whether you use it a lot or a little. It's a time limit, not how much you use it.
I'm not sure that that's held up in the more modern takes. I would
I
have to
thought
go back and reread some stuff. I know that the rings are very much like functional as computers. Like this one would give him like warning signals and defend him if he was under attack. But like if you read the Jeff Johns run, they're like computers. They talk to you. They tell you how much percentage power they have left. They tell you if something's in your proximity. I mean, you can get information from them. And they touch on the thing with the information because it basically just downloaded it into his brain when he first got to Oa. But there is so much more potential that can be done with those rings, according to the lore that I really enjoyed in that Jeff Johns run.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, okay, so maybe you're right. Maybe I was wrong. For some reason, I had it in my head that it was a 24-hour charge.
Well, they've changed so much of this over the years that
Okay.
maybe originally
maybe we're both right and we're both wrong.
Yeah.
And that's I can live with that. Anyway, regardless, I do appreciate though that you're right. They don't fully go into everything that the ring can do, but they do show that it can do more than just the constructs.
Sure.
That it translates, that it creates the suit, that it turns the mask on and off, whether or not he needs it, that it gives him information. It warns him of danger. And I like all of that. Again, all the Green Lantern mythology stuff, I really like in this movie. I like Oa. The design work of Oa and the aliens and the core and the Guardians, I think all of that is A+. I love it.
So, many of our listeners, I'm sure, will appreciate this. Maybe your casual moving going fan, not so much, but I'll just come out and say it right now. I at least feel like for whatever problems this script may have, it was done by people who've actually read some of the comic books.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's admirable that they did not shy away from some of the weirder and wonkier aspects of the Green Lantern mythology. They just leaned into it and expected you to go with it. I know I did. But here's the funny thing and the ironic thing is, for all the people who don't like this movie, I've never heard them complain about that stuff. I've never heard them complain about the aliens or the Guardians or Oa. I just heard them complain that I've heard complaints about the special effects, which I don't really agree with. I think for the most part, the effects still look really good, but I know not everyone agrees. I've heard them complain about the story. I've heard them complain about the tone, but it's funny. I never heard anyone say, "Oh, it's just too weird with the with the blue guys," and I never heard that.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody say it doesn't feel like Green Lantern.
Yeah,
because it does. For all of its faults, it does feel, and again, this is the highest form of praise I can pay it. It really does feel like a true Green Lantern movie written by people who understand, for the most part, who this character is. Now, granted, with a movie, you always have to make some adjustments. It's never going to be, in most cases, a right off the page translation, but I feel like they did it right way more than they didn't in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, again, especially fellow fans like us, after this movie, most of them that I talked to would be like, well, I wanted more Sinestro. I wanted more Kilowog. That was the request, because those things I think they nailed. The designs of Kilowog, Tomar-Ray, Sinestro, the personalities, the voices, the effects, I thought they all looked great.
Yeah. And, the Michael Clark Duncan for Kilowog's voice was great. Jeffrey Rush for Tomar-Ray was great. And I feel like this is universally everyone's opinion that Mark Strong as Sinestro was absolutely the high point of this film.
Oh yeah, perfect, absolutely perfect. And sorry, we
I
got
mean,
distracted, but even Abin Sur, he looked great. Tamir
sure,
Morrison,
yeah.
for his very limited amount of screen time, he's good. He's right off the page. Tamir Morrison gives a nice performance. Like
And
you,
that was all, off the page stuff. Him crashing the ship. He's mortally wounded. He sends the ring out to find a replacement. He meets Hal. He kind of gives him the pamphlet crash course, if you will, and he's kind of off from there. I mean, that's all off the page stuff, guys.
yeah,
I don't know what more you could have asked in that particular scenario.
right.
But going back to Mark Strong, because I just need to say it, if you just wanted to give me a Sinestro solo film, I would watch the shit out of that
Yeah.
because he was great.
Yeah. I remember again walking out of that initial screening and there was someone I was friendly with. I wasn't that close with him, but I was like, "Oh, what'd you think?" And he was obviously a comic book nerd and he went, "I liked Sinestro." And that was his review. um I mean, even Amanda Waller, Angela Bassett, that was great casting. And had this become a franchise and launched a DC universe on film, she could have continued on. So that's another one of those, like, damn it, missed opportunities because we love Angela Bassett. Having her as Waller, I think, was really cool. And then, it just wasn't meant to be.
To show you how frequently I watch this movie, I completely forgot that Angela Bassett and Amanda Waller were both in this movie. Okay,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
I was like, oh, did I know that? Yeah, I guess I had to have known it because I've seen the movie before, but it was like a surprise to me almost.
Well, and I remember again before this movie came out, her doing interviews and saying, basically they asked her if she was going to be the Samuel L. Jackson of DC, and she said, "I'm happy to be if that's how it turns out." So she could have been this unifying element if this movie had done better, and more things would have spawned from it. But unfortunately, it wasn't in the cards. But still, I was like, that's good casting. She's a good Waller.
I really like her.
Yeah, I do too. Uh, did you remember that Taika Waititi's in this?
No, no, I did not.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's so crazy that even though I know that's him, I still don't see him because I can only picture him now. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's him. But I have like this weird cognitive separation between the guy in this movie and the Taika Waititi we all know.
Yeah, I again, much like with Amanda Waller, like the credits rolled, and I was like, Taika Waititi. What is he? One of the voices of one of the characters that I missed or something? And then I started looking at I can't remember the character's name. I'm sorry, Hal's buddy.
Tom.
Okay, yeah, that's a tough one to remember. That was my dad's name.
That's his name.
But I kept looking. I was like, that's him, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, it's
he
crazy.
aged about 20 years in about 5. So
to go back to again something like, I do think that a simpler, more streamlined story, I think, would have served the film in this case. Like, I didn't need Parallax in this movie.
Parallax was, if you're going to accuse something of being too soon in this film, I think Parallax was it, because Parallax is a huge GL villain. I mean, huge. And not to say that Sinestro isn't like his Joker or what have you, but I mean, Parallax is like damn near a Galactus level threat.
I mean, yeah. And I remember when it came out, a lot of people complaining that it was the Galactus problem from Fantastic Four 2, where they did another giant cloud. I think this is far better than the Galactus problem because this giant cloud has a big scary face and actually does stuff.
And it actually does look like a lot of what Parallax was portrayed in the comic. Not exactly, but I mean the concept of him just being like a big shapeless form like that, like an evil face, that's pretty Parallax accurate. Was it like cloudy and stuff? No, I think it was more energy stuff, but still the concept of Parallax is I feel like it was okay in that respect.
Yeah, I agree. I don't mind that, and I think that again, it's a far lesser sin than what happened with Galactus. But again, to your point, it was way too soon. I'm not in love with the concept of Parallax anyway. I'll be honest. It doesn't do much for me. And I do feel like it was one too many, but if they wanted to tease it, I think that's fine. But I do think that this suffers from too many villains. I mean, Sinestro, I guess, doesn't actually become a villain in this film, so you do need another villain. But Parallax and Hector Hammond, for me, neither of them do a thing for me.
No.
I think Parallax is too vague and big and weird, and Hector Hammond is just too gross. I don't like him. I don't like watching him. I'm not entertained by him. I think Peter Skarsgård gives a good performance. I'm not in any way
Yeah.
blaming him.
Same.
I think he actually adds some really nice moments in his performance that were not on the page. And so I think he's doing excellent work with what he's given. I just don't like the character. And I don't think he's not a great match to go toe to toe with Green Lantern, because he's like deformed and gross. And, like it just, Green Lantern beating up on him, it's like beating up on the weak kid at school. Like, I don't know. It was a very odd choice to go with Hector Hammond, and that's the one
It's
that.
basically Green Lantern's version of the leader from Hulk. I mean, it's
Sure,
just
yeah.
it's not a third act physical threat that he's really going to. It's not one I want to see. Let's put it that way. So
Yeah.
I understand why they wanted something more than Hector Hammond, but they couldn't just have Parallax be the villain throughout. They had to have like a pawn of Parallax, if you will. But we can always do we should have done this, we could have done this. Maybe start with the Manhunters and have Hal have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Or
I like
something
that
along
better.
those lines.
I like that better already.
But
Because
the point is, Hector Hammond, you and I are on the same page. Hector Hammond is not quite enough for a third act final threat, like the boss, maybe leading up to levels of the game, but not the boss at the end. And Parallax should have been a problem that was dealt with by the entire core. It should not have been a solo effort.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I agree with that. And I mean, I'll say, I love that moment when Hector, he's like on the table and he uses his powers to kind of free himself, and he jumps up and he looks at Amanda Waller and his dad and he just goes, run.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's a great moment. Again, I think Peter Sarsgaard is doing good work, but this is I think one of those confounding things in the movie is that, and I don't know if this was a Martin Campbell choice. I don't know if this was the editor's choice. I don't know whose choice it was, but I don't like it. Is that anytime something cool is happening to Hal, they intercut it with something horrible happening to Hector.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, does it kill the mood. And I like Hal finally, right. He finally powers up the ring and he starts to get the oath, and his eyes go green and he starts saying the oath, and you're like, oh, cool. Oh my God. He's starting to get there. And then you cut to Hector looking at the body of Abin Sur and getting zapped with the parallax juice. And I'm like, no. I was watching Hal learn what it is to be a Green Lantern. I don't want to see this right now. And then even worse than that is when Hal finally takes off and is heading to Oa. Oh my God, it's the moment we're waiting for, and the music is cool, and he's in the green energy, and he's flying through space. It should be this epic, triumphant, exciting moment. But then they keep cutting to Hector in bed, sweating through his sheets and screaming bloody murder. And I'm like, no, one or the other. Don't keep going back and forth. And I understand what they're going for, which is
exactly. They're trying to show the contrast between the two and how they get to where they're going to be by the end.
Yes. But even though I understand the choice, I think it was a bad choice.
That I will agree with.
Yeah.
Because again, and you and I think are very like-minded in this. The first Iron Man movie in 2008, I still think that's a Hall of Fame superhero film. I think it's wonderfully done. I hardly have a single problem with any frame anywhere in that film.
I agree.
But guess what? They focus on Tony and what he's doing to become Iron Man, and they don't cut away from Tony when he's doing that kind of stuff. They're showing every step that he takes from the cave to the I forget what it was, the Mark II or Mark III suit that's in that movie by the end. They show all of that. It's developed very, very concentrated. Favreau did a very wonderful job with that, as did, the cast and Robert Downey. And, that movie just clicks in every way. This one just misses on those points,
Well, yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, that movie, Iron Man, if we're using that as a comparison, like there are moments in that movie where it is strutting, and then you're just along with it. You're like, oh yeah, this is it, and then whether it's when he first gets out of the cave in the Mark I, or when he goes, Yeah, when he does the first real mission in the actual suit, whatever. There are moments where you just feel like the energy, the style, the confidence, and you get swept up in it. And this movie, Green Lantern, has moments where it's about to do the same. And just when it's about to, you cut to Hector Hammond's brain exploding, and
Yeah.
you're like, no, you're killing the momentum, guys.
But that was kind of the point. They focus on Tony. You're in that theater to see Tony Stark and Iron Man.
Yeah.
That's your main draw. That's what people paid their bucks to sit down and munch on popcorn to for 2 hours and 15 minutes. But I'm not going to say that Obadiah Stane was not a developed villain, but they gave him his own moments and not at the expense of Tony's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you and I, again, I feel like the same page in that we see what they were doing is and trying to show that contrast between Hector and Hal, but they're costing you that excitement buildup and that strut and being along for that ride with Hal in those moments. Like you could have completed everything that Hal was doing up to the Oa thing and then cut to Hector for a couple minutes and show what he was doing and then move along from there.
Right.
I feel like you and I think both feel like that would have been a better choice.
Yeah, for sure. So, and again, that's where frustrating is the word that always comes to mind is, you're like, oh yeah, heck yeah, this is going to be cool. And then they do something like that and you're like, oh no, come on. You had it. What'd you do? So anyway, it's funny though. We talked about the fact that he becomes Green Lantern. What did we say? 45 minutes in, 50 minutes, something
40,
like that.
46 was the clock when he is on Oa talking to Tomar Ray.
But I don't feel like we get a shortage of Hal as Green Lantern because I think once that happens, we get a lot of him, and I like that. And I think the constructs are great. Again, I think the effects are great. I really like the Green Lantern stuff. But going back to Hector, when he first comes in to save Waller and Hector's father from Hector, and they have that battle, there's a couple really cool moments in there where he like flips and he kicks that gas canister right back at him and he creates a flamethrower to melt the glass before it can hurt anyone. And there's some cool moments. And then like Hector knocks him out and then he's like awkwardly laying on the ground and Hector awkwardly lays
like next to him. Yeah.
And it's like this again, like this was starting to be a very cool action scene. And then it ends with both of them laying on the ground, like sweating. And it's just, it
kills its own momentum in several places with that.
Exactly. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing, guys? I like the moment with the helicopter crash at the big party. I like it because I love that it's not just a coincidence that this happens to happen while Hal is nearby. I like that Hector is the one that causes it, which causes Hal to step in. So I dig that. I like the vibes of Ferris Air. There's something cool, like old school retro art deco about it, which I really like. Almost kind of a Rocketeer vibe, which
I was just getting ready to say it felt like the Rocketeer. So yeah.
Which is probably why I like it so much. But like, there's like those cool murals in the office of Ferris Air that I'm like, oh God, that feels like it's right out of the Rocketeer or even Batman 89 for that matter. So yeah, like there are things like that, like designs, vibes, things like that I really like. And again, when they let Green Lantern be Green Lantern, I think it's really good. But as soon as he's about to start running, they trip him, and you're like, oh. Yeah.
But you talk about the constructs, okay? So they basically try to teach him from the very beginning. Your imagination is literally the limit of what this ring is capable of doing. And some people feel like it was needed more with the constructs or Green Lantern-y stuff. But for me, I've always looked at it since the first time I watched it, and nothing's changed with this most recent viewing. Hal doesn't quite grasp that concept yet. So what he does is falls back on what he knows, which is why you see these military-style weapons that he's using, or sees his nephew's racetrack is what saves those people at the gala that they're at, or we get to the end and he's trying to draw parallax into the sun and he ties two jets to the his wrists or whatever it's tied to pull him out of that gravitational thing. He is using what he knows to get him out of those situations or to deal with those situations. And I always thought that was a good choice because he can't be like super fully developed, expansive, these amazing constructs 100%. And, to be fair, even in the comics, he still uses a lot of those kind of things like
Oh
the,
yeah, 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 yeah.
or even like the big boxing glove fist that he swings at him with. I was
Yeah.
glad to see that in this movie because that's a staple. So I've always liked that. And, people complained about the constructs a lot when this was first released. I don't hear it so much anymore, but I always thought that was the right choice.
Oh, I agree. I think all the constructs he makes are great. I really like them. And you're right. Like there is at least logic behind them because that is the stuff he knows. That is what he would imagine. You mentioned the two fighter jets that he uses to keep himself from getting sucked into the sun. I love that. I love it because it's so Hal Jordan and it's also just a great visual. And then also using it to fly out of there. And yeah, like he does so many cool things with the constructs that I think is very successful. And then even like the training sequence, we mentioned it earlier, but as short as it is, it's also just a lot of fun to see what he thinks to create and him starting to grasp it versus what Kilowog and then Sinestro can do.
Right. So it's again the difference in that experience level, and I think again we're talking about maybe you shouldn't have held anything back, but I feel like had this movie gotten a sequel or two, by the end of it, I think we would have seen a lot more development out of it, or at least
Yeah.
in my mind, that's where I go with it.
Yeah, yeah. I remember, and this is a little off topic, but I remember Jeff Johns talking about Green Lantern's constructs and saying how like Hal's constructs were very like military based or because being a test pilot. And he said John Stewart was very like architecture based because he was an architect. And then I hope I'm getting this right. And Kyle Rayner is a lot more artistic. And
Yes.
so all their constructs are even different between the lanterns, which I think was
Yes.
really clever.
Because they're diverting to what they know. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how our
Yeah.
minds function. We're comfortable with what we know. So if you're asking us to, form a thought, naturally the natural thought we come up with is going to be the one that we use to make that construct. So
Yeah. And what's crazy is I like the big racetrack. I love the way it's set up. I actually do really like the scene between he and his nephew. I think that's really sweet. I would have liked to have seen actually a little bit more of that. But I appreciate that it's set up at the beginning, and then when he does it because it was front of mind, I liked that. But it is funny. I remember when the movie came out. I remember people going, "Oh, and the racetrack was so stupid." I was like, "Really? Why?" Like,
it made sense to me.
yeah, me too. I thought that was, again, there are certain complaints where I'm like, yeah, you know what, I can get on board with that. And then there are complaints like that. I was like, why? What's wrong with the racetrack? It makes sense to me.
Yeah, and again, his brain is firing on a recent thought to deal with this situation, and it's not a combat situation. It's a how do I save these people with these newfound abilities that I have. So to me, it
Yeah.
made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Had he used the racetrack in a combat situation, I probably would have had a very different reaction to it. But since it was used in the fashion that it was, I have no issue with it at all. I actually thought it was a pretty clever idea.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I like it.
And now I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, damn it, if we could have got some manhunters in this, that would have been awesome.
Yeah. Again, I understand if you didn't want to make Sinestro the main villain in the first one. I still think the way to go would be to have a lesser villain for the first two acts and make Sinestro make the turn in the third act and still use him.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would have done because again, there's no guarantee you get a sequel, as this movie proves.
Well, I mean, the ambition was certainly there with this film. I can't discredit that at all because they thought they had a winner in their pocket. I'm 100%
Yeah,
convinced
yeah,
of that. They wouldn't have spent this money and all that, or using this as a launch point for their shared universe, which was their intention from its release. They were building to a Green Lantern Corps war, is what they were doing.
mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm.
they would have eventually brought in the Red Lanterns and the purple, the Sapphires, and all of that would have been. We would have had a fully developed Green Lantern universe probably by the third movie, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I remember again leading up. I was watching everything I could. I remember there was an interview between Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and whoever was interviewing them, and they were asking them about the potential sequel, and acknowledged that Carol Ferris becomes Star Sapphire. And I like that her code name is Sapphire in the dogfight.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them even acknowledging it and Blake Lively going, yeah, I want to do Star Sapphire in the sequel. I want to kick his butt. Like, and so even they were thinking about it because, yeah, by all accounts, this should have worked. On paper, it should have worked.
Well, if I may just throw my dogness out here for just a brief second, seeing Blake Lively in the Star Sapphire outfit probably would have allowed me to forgive a lot of her bad line deliveries.
I would have liked to have seen it as well for the performance alone. That's what I was going to say, because it's another one of my favorite parts in the movie is I love when he says, the one thing I know how to do is fly. And then when he finds out he's on Oa, he's talking to Tomar Ray and he says, we're going to fly now. And his reaction of fly, that I can do. I love that flying sequence. I love the music, that score right there. I think is terrific. I love them flying through Oa. I love us getting to see all of Oa. That is one of those, for me, just like a really magical superhero movie moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked all the Oa stuff. I wanted more of it was my problem.
Yeah.
Like, cut 15 minutes out of the first act and give me 15 more minutes while he's on Oa.
Well, and
that's what I need,
That's just it, is like find a way to do the setup on Earth more efficiently. So yes, we can get more of Oa, we can get more of Kilowog and Tomar Ray, et cetera, et cetera. I will also say another moment. Well, okay, I'll give you a frustrating moment, then I'll give you an awesome moment. The frustrating moment is like it all culminates in that hangar with Hector, and he's got Carol floating with the syringe and everything, and I do appreciate sort of the little switcheroo that Hal does, where he offers him the ring, knowing full well he can't use it because you have to be chosen.
I want to interject there because go ahead. I lost my mind over that the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not how the friggin' ring works. This is bullshit. And I was getting mad. And then he said, no, the ring has to choose you. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I could not have lived with that.
Yeah.
I would have probably thrown things at my television had that stuck. So
yeah.
I appreciated that.
Yeah, I think it's a great little misdirect. Anyway, it all culminates with, there's kind of a big action scene, and I like that Carol at least gets to help out a little bit by using the drone fighters to shoot at Hector, whatever. But it ends, she manages to get the ring back to Hal, and you see him put it on. And then it cuts to the exterior of the building where you quickly just see him fly out. And I was like, really? We're not going to make this a moment? We're not going to make this a badass moment for the big final battle of him putting on that ring one last time and like this big surge of energy and making something cool? It's literally, you're going to cut away when he puts the ring on? How do you do that? So that's frustrating. But the cool moment comes a little bit later when he's doing the constructs and he's trying to defend the city from Parallax, which Parallax takes out a lot of people in the meantime. Oh my God. But when he is shielding himself from Parallax and he starts reciting the oath, that scene, that moment, I think is really awesome. And it's like, again, as a Green Lantern fan, hearing him give that oath in such with such conviction in a moment when he needs it, I love that moment.
I agree. 100%.
And I think they do a nice balance, especially in that final battle, of they start very small with literally just Hal, Carol, and Hector. And then they open it up into the city with Hal versus Parallax trying to defend the people. And then they go even bigger with then Hal pulling Parallax into space for the big final battle. I find that to be like a nice, satisfying progression of stakes.
No, I would agree with that. I don't think it was poorly done. It's just, again, where these particular villains would have been better served is kind of where we're at.
Absolutely. I'm trying to say the things that I like, so I'm not just constantly ragging on the things I don't.
Well, given the movie that we have, not the movie that we want, yes, I think they did an admirable enough job with it. Right. I'm not totally dissatisfied, but I do think there is just that better version laying around somewhere that we didn't get.
Yep, I completely agree with that. So, yeah. And even so, even watching it the other night, again, has some of the luster worn off, of course, but I still enjoyed it well enough. But I will say the ending with him, saying goodbye to Carol, and he's like, "I'm going to go look for trouble," and he takes off as Green Lantern, and you hear that Tomar Ray voiceover, and you see him flying into space. When that moment happens, even now, 13 years later, even though I know it ain't a great movie, when that happens, I still like just got a little sad of being like, oh, and we never got to see what happened next, because
Yeah.
it's a really great ending moment, in my opinion.
Yes. And I feel like the sequel would have been an even better outing,
Yeah.
assuming we got what we were teased with.
Yeah.
But also, I want to address the main core guys, Sinestro, Kilowog, and Tomar Ray coming to his aid at the end after he defeats Parallax.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that and I appreciated that, but the desperate geek in me, the greedy one, really wishes they would have shown up in time to help Hal deal with Parallax.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But at the same time, them giving him his due respect for dealing with this threat that was, a huge threat to all of Oa and all of the Corps and the Guardians and everything else. Them giving that respect and them bailing him out in that moment when he's so drained after that battle, I thought was a very good moment.
Yeah, I agree. Here's what's funny. So going back, like once he realized that Parallax is coming and that the Earth is threatened, he goes to plead for help from the Guardians. And that's another scene that I believe is extended in the extended cut. I think it was much shorter in the theatrical. So in the theatrical, he went and he says some of the same stuff, but he says, "Let me fight for my world." And I remember when the movie came out, people going, "Why did he have to go ask permission to fight for his world? Why couldn't he just do that anyway?" And then in the extended cut, you realize there was more to the conversation of him asking Sinestro for help and then asking the Guardians for help and them saying no, which leads him to say, "Well, then you know what? Then I'll do it. So let me fight for my world," which makes makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to call that out because you just reminded me of that moment, because then he goes by himself, and you're right. Then, Sinestro, Kilowog, and Tomar Ray show up at the very last moment to help him.
Right. And, the asking permission thing, I mean, technically speaking, the Guardians can take the power away from him at any moment they want to. So
That's true. But
But
even when
they never really address that. That's just something that I know in the back of my head. So
well, and even when he quote unquote quit, they let him keep the ring. So I don't know.
yeah, you're right.
I'm all confused by the whole thing. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was worth a mention there. And I do love like the big gathering of Green Lanterns. I still have that image in my rotating wallpaper for my computer because I just think it's such a great image. If there's that giant crystal lantern monolith thing, and then just 1,000 Green Lanterns at the base of it, I just think that's a really cool.
That moment when they all put their hands up in the air and shoot the green light up, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, the big Green Lantern salute is awesome. So yeah, I dig that too.
You know what? I feel like we kind of saw the same movie here.
We did. And
Meanwhile, there's people out there saying, "Heck yeah, I saw the same movie too," and there's other ones that didn't even download this episode because they saw what it was about. So,
you know what? DC fans, even if they don't like this movie, they probably still want to talk about this movie because we're DC fans.
Yeah, that's fair. Hey, I also read another thing on the IMDb. I don't know if I even want to say this publicly, but is it true that Zack Snyder was offered this before Martin Campbell was?
I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
I never heard that. Doesn't mean it's not true, but I never heard it.
Well, I'm not sure the timeline lines up with this one, okay? Because what the IMDb thing said, and you can always trust the internet, is Zack Snyder
they wouldn't lie to you.
Yeah, Zack Snyder was initially offered the film, but he turned it down because he was completing Watchmen. I feel like by the time he would have gotten around to working on this, Watchmen was already released and done.
Yes. Yeah, that doesn't line up, Watchmen, because Watchmen was 2009. This came out 2011. Exactly. So
exactly.
No, that doesn't really line up. He was in the middle of Sucker Punch. Because it was when he was making Sucker Punch that he was announced for Man of Steel.
Yeah, because that was released in 2011 also.
Yeah.
Like March of 2011.
But again, Martin Campbell on paper makes all the sense when you look at his filmography. He revived Bond not once but twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing. His Zorro movies are good. Like Martin Campbell should have been a home run, but I didn't know that there was allegedly disagreement between he and the studio or he and Ryan Reynolds. That's a bummer to hear. Sean Gerber will often tell the story. He went to the premiere of Green Lantern, and he said that like at the after party, he just felt bad for Martin Campbell because it felt like it didn't go over well. And so he just remembers, he goes, I just felt bad for Martin Campbell. He looked unhappy.
Mm.
So that's sad. But anyway, so yeah, we saw the same movie. There are ups, there are downs. Again, I will still, even though I have not gone back to it a lot over the past at least 10 years, I didn't mind going back to it for this, and I would watch it again. I've mentioned the score a couple of times, the James Newton Howard score, and I really love also the closing credits music. I think that's pretty badass. But how did you feel about the score?
I didn't think it was all that memorable, but I've never just sat and listened to it independent of the movie, and I've had a lot of space between each time I've watched the movie. But
Mm-hmm.
nothing jumps out to me. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about a Superman or Batman '89 or any of that kind of theme. I won't be walking around humming it, but again, I agree. The closing credit music I thought was pretty exhilarating, and I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find anything out of place or off putting with anything that happened throughout the film. So I would say the score is adequate to above average.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I listened to it a lot back in 2011, but then today, just for funsies, I listened to it at work, and yeah, it's pretty good. Again, it's not top tier with some of our favorite scores of all time, like you mentioned, but
Yeah.
it's pretty darn good. And I also think that it is kind of unfairly ignored because of the movie's reputation.
So I'm bad about this. I like scores, but I'm just not on your level with it. So way too often, James Newton Howard and Howard Shore cross lines with me, and I don't remember which one was which. So give me a couple of examples of other things that you can think of off the top of your head that James Newton Howard has done.
From James Newton Howard, I mean, the first ones that come to my mind are like Disney ones,
Okay,
like Dinosaur, which is really darn
which I've
good.
never seen. So
The movie, the movie's fine, but the score is great. um, he also did Treasure Planet, which I love that too. I'm trying to think of what else. I feel like James Newton Howard also did a lot of the M Night Shyamalan movies. I feel like he did Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense.
okay,
He co-wrote the music with Hans Zimmer for Batman Begins and The Dark Knight.
okay, that I did know, but I didn't know how much of the music was his and how much was Hans's. I didn't know if that was a collaborative thing or if one did one piece, one did another.
Yeah, I feel like by The Dark Knight Rises, he had stepped away, but he at least did the first two.
Okay.
I'm looking at other big ones that he's done, but because honestly, I think his music is great. Yeah, Treasure Planet, Atlantis, The Lost Empire, Signs,
I love the
Unbreakable.
score and signs, so there's
Yeah.
that.
A Perfect Murder, Devil's Advocate. I mean, he's still doing stuff today.
He's done a lot of stuff that I've never seen. There might be my problem here.
I Am Legend, Dark Knight. You've heard of that. Hunger Games, Snow White and the Huntsman, Maleficent, Split, Red
So
Sparrow.
he's done a lot of things that I've either never seen or I've only seen once.
Yeah, Fantastic Beasts. Just this summer he did The Fall Guy. So
I mean, I certainly recognize the name, mostly from the Nolan Batman films, but I just couldn't place anything else that he'd done.
Jungle Cruise, Raya and the Last Dragon. Um, yeah, he's really good. And again, I think that this one's pretty. Oh, Born Legacy, interesting. Yeah, I mean, he has quite the resume himself.
Yeah, obviously a prolific composer.
Oh, Nanny McPhee returns. Obviously,
Oh well, yeah. Again, haven't seen.
he's in all of M Night's movies. Michael Clayton, Blood Diamond. Yeah. Anyway, King Kong, Peter Jackson, King Kong.
That's a good one. I like that
Yeah,
one a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did I say Peter Pan? The Peter Pan remake.
No.
Even if you haven't seen that movie, I bet you've heard the score because they use that in so many trailers. Anyway, James Newton Howard, I like him. So let's do a little more disorder stuff. So a least favorite part.
Oh, I mean, can I cheat and say Blake Lively's acting?
I mean, you can say whatever you want.
Okay, Blake
It's your
Lively's
life.
acting, because that's the one part that consistently wrinkled my nose and just made me go, really? It just,
Uh,
I mean, it's something that takes me out of a movie that hard. I just have to call it out. I'm sorry.
okay.
I'm sure she's a wonderful human being. She's incredibly easy on the eyes, but I can't let that line delivery stuff go. It's bad, bad.
Um, for me, I think I'm gonna say it is like the Hal and Carol. It's almost every scene of them together because it's so frustrating because they just, yeah, they're just so mean to each other, and it drives me nuts. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't. I think it's the moment, like, because it's a really good scene after he's Green Lantern. They're like sitting there at the airfield and they're sitting on that tower. Like, I really like that scene. And then it all comes to like a screeching halt when he's like, "Well, I quit," and she starts lecturing him again. And I feel like it's the second half of that scene because it's that scene starts so good that I feel like it could be up there with some of my favorite like superhero romantic scenes, like Superman and Lois Lane flying, or
Mhm.
like Spider-Man and Mary Jane kissing while Spider-Man's upside down. Like that's how good that scene starts. And then it ends with such a fart that it annoys the crap out of me.
No,
um,
that's fair. And if I'm given a less snarky and like actually film quality answer, I have to say being shortchanged with the training in OA, I think is another really big off-putting thing for me in this one, because I've mentioned it like 11 times now.
yeah. Well, how about your favorite part?
Ooh, favorite part. Sinestro.
All
And
right.
when I say Sinestro, I mean just the character in general is so off the page, perfectly portrayed in both look and feel and personality and swagger, and the way he talks to Hal and the way he talks to the Guardians, and his descent into the evil or the Yellow Lantern. Just all of that to me was so well done, and credit Mark Strong. I mean, that guy. You talk about an actor that just simply doesn't get the recognition for some really amazing work that he puts in, and I don't think for all the stuff I've seen him in that he's been fantastic in. I can't think of another one that I truly love more than what he did in this movie.
Yeah. Nope. I think that's fair. I mean, I'm gonna say, like, if I had 15 minutes and I was going to watch just a little bit of Green Lantern, what would I jump to? I would jump to him waking up in Oa and that sequence of him waking up, flying with Tomar Ray, and then the training sequence. I think that for me is like the coolest part of the movie. It's the prettiest. It's just really fun. I agree with you that the training sequence was shortchanged, but the part we did get is really cool.
That's fair.
All right, well, let's do closing thoughts and a letter grade for Green Lantern.
The best thing I could say is the movie has not shifted a lot in either direction for it, in 13 years and four viewings that I've had of it. Uh, I would say this: if you watched it initially and haven't revisited it in a long time, or haven't seen it since the theater, and you were feeling kind of scorned by it, I get it. Maybe give it another chance, guys, because it's really a decent movie. It's not great. It's not bad. It's decent. It's entertaining. It gives you a lot of what you want from the Green Lantern lore, as we've praised for pretty much the whole time we've been talking. It feels like a Green Lantern movie, and that to me that's very high praise, because Green Lantern, and especially Hal, is a very big passion of mine. I love the characters very, very much. So, I would be hypersensitive to it, and they cast, an actor that I was not a fan of. I'm still not like, Ryan Reynolds fan club or anything, but I've softened up on him a lot in the last couple of years. But, I for me to be able to watch this film right from the get-go and have these same feelings about it, and that it's an actor I don't like playing a character that I love, but I still think that they did a pretty good job of getting things across the way that you should with this character. So I would say give it another shot. I would say it's worth your time, and I think it's middle of the pack for a superhero movie. Which we've had some great ones. We've had some stink bombs. middle of the pack's not a bad thing. Sometimes you just want to kill 2 hours and watch something fresh that you don't watch 3 or 4 times a year. Give it a shot. I think you might soften up on it.
Yeah, I like you said, I think we saw the same movie. It's not as bad as you've heard, but it's not great either, and that's okay. Like you said, middle of the pack is not the worst place to be. I think the most frustrating thing about it is what a missed opportunity it is, and that's something that was asked recently in the Wayne Manor mailbox of like superhero missed opportunities, and I do think that it's fair to call this that, because even though it's not awful, it's frustrating that it's not better based on the talent involved in the investment that they made and all of that. It's a shame it wasn't a home run. But that doesn't mean there's not stuff to like, because there is. Like we said, Sinestro, Kilowog, Tomar Ray, they're all pretty pitch perfect. Oha's pretty pitch perfect. The score is good. Ryan Reynolds is good as Hal Jordan. There's some fun action and there's some fun mythology, and you got to respect that they went for it. I just think that unfortunately the dialogue, what they chose to do with it, the villains kind of let the rest of it down, and that's a bummer. But I can still put it on and enjoy it well enough for what it is. Did you give it a letter grade?
I did not.
Okay, well.
Oh,
or do you want me to go first so I don't?
No, I've been thinking about this the whole time we've been talking. Where am I going to land this? And honestly, Andy, I can't decide because I feel like a B- is too generous and a C+ is too harsh.
Well, we're in the same neighborhood. I was going to say C+.
All right. Well, let's just go C+.
Yeah. I probably would have given it a B in 2011 because I just focused on the stuff I liked. So it's fallen a little bit for me, but still C+ isn't bad. And ironically, that's what I said about the Fantastic Four movies. I'm like, they're both solid C+. This is a solid C+, but at least there's enough to enjoy.
Very much like this movie, I feel like they got a lot of Doom and Galactus taking out of this equation completely. I feel like they got a lot of things right, and it felt very much like what a lot of the Fantastic Four stuff that I know, and I haven't read as much of it as I have Green Lantern or Batman or Superman or any of that, but those movies just they're okay, and sometimes okay is okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I own them both. I watch them
Same.
periodically. I watch them once every, probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, I guess. And every time I watch them, I'm like, boy, I think there was a better movie there, but that's not bad.
Yep, same. All right, C+. I'm happy with that. 2 C+ for Green Lantern from 2011. We're pretty much on the same page. And yeah, your mileage may vary. There's some people who think this is the worst superhero movie ever made. And it always makes me a little sad when Ryan Reynolds throws shade at it. Not that he doesn't have the right to, because he has a good sense of humor about it, but also I'm like, but I want to meet him and go, Ryan, it wasn't that bad. But he doesn't need me. He's got Deadpool. What does he need me for? Anyway, well, happy 13 years to Green Lantern, you mixed bag of a movie, you. And we've done it. Well done, Jamie. Glad we finally got around to this. But
long time coming.
It was, but it also felt like a good time. Ryan Reynolds is on everyone's lips right now because of Deadpool and Wolverine. So why not now?
Speaking of Deadpool and Wolverine, all y'all get your asses out to the theater and watch that like 10 times each, because I'm still a little shy on my box office prediction on that one. Although I think I'm doing better than the rest of you, but I'm still a little bit short.
All right. Well, what did you say? $1 zillion or something?
I believe I said 716 or something like that. Oh, last time I looked, it was at like 518.
Well, you're right. You're probably closer than any of us. All right. Well, Green Lantern. Hope you all enjoyed this little look back at this movie. But it is time to check in with you fine feathered finks. Let's crack open the Wayne Manor mailbox. It is time again for the Wayne Manor mailbox.
You've got mail.
Darren, what is a letter for me?
Maybe temporary.
She wrote a letter.
You're one hell of a messenger. This is all Master Wayne.
All right, first email here is from Gabe Nakamura. It says, "Hey, Holy BatCast crew. I really liked Batman Caped Crusader. For as much headlines as Bruce Timm and Matt Reeves' involvement got, I think Ed Brubaker may be the show's most consequential creator. Cape Crusader is more similar to the Batman comics from Brubaker and Greg Rucka than it is to Batman the Animated Series. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's one of the things that I appreciate about it. My question, are there any Batman writers and artists who you might like to see involved in an animated Batman show? Thanks a lot. Hope you're doing well, Gabe. Thanks, Gabe. I'm glad you like Cape Crusader. I still haven't finished it. I will get around to that. But
What episode are you on now? Just out of curiosity.
I have done the first 5, so I'm on 6.
So have you had the Gentleman Ghost episode or no?
No, that's next, I think.
Okay.
I think that's 6.
Spoilers, that's the only one I wasn't crazy about.
Oh, interesting.
But there's a very big reason behind that, and we'll talk about that some other time.
Okay. So anyway, Gabe's question. Any Batman writers or artists you'd like to see involved with an animated show?
Frank Miller and Jim Lee pop into my mind immediately because they're my favorite writer and artist for Batman.
Yeah.
There's probably a better answer in there. There was a point where I would have said Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil. Little late on that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. They're unavailable.
Yeah, they're a little busy. I don't know. You got anything popping in your mind while I'm thinking?
I mean, I do, but nothing super inspired. Jim Lee's a great call. I would love to see some of his designs turned into animation. Greg Capullo, Dan Mora, who is my current favorite Batman Superman artist. I just love his stuff. I think they're all great. And then as far as writers, I think Scott Snyder, I miss him on Batman. I still like James Tynion. I would like to see him do something. So those are the ones that jump to mind.
All right. Yeah, I don't have anything any more inspired either. I just went immediately to my 2 favorites.
No, I think that's totally fair. All right, next question here is from Tom Fallows. It says, hey guys, I hope you're doing well. With the Penguin series coming out for the Reeves Gritty universe, and there previously being plans for more expanded works for the Reeves verse, I was wondering, with Brave and the Bold, what spin-off movies or series would you like to see come of it? I'd love a Birds of Prey or Batgirl series for the new verse, and maybe, possibly, a Nightwing movie. What do you think? Keep up the great podcast, Tom Fallows. Thanks, Tom. So I guess because the Reeves verse is getting spin-offs and series, what would we like to see for the Brave and Bold universe? Jamie?
I mean, the big overarching bold answer, I guess, would be anything with the Bat family would be perfectly acceptable for me because, sure, I'd love a Batgirl series. I'd love a Nightwing series. I'd love, a series, 3 Robins or something along those lines. Tim and Damian and Dick and, just get all that stuff, man. Get all of it. Just get all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm greedy. I wanted all of it.
I agree. I'm with you. Yes. I would like a Nightwing movie. I would like a Batgirl series. I would like a Robin series. I would like a Birds of Prey series. I would like a Bat Family movie. All the above. And when I say a Robin series, Tim Drake. But yeah, I mean, we've all been crying for Bat Family in live action for a long time. It seems like Brave and the Bold is more apt to lean into that. So yeah, let's spin off those characters into their own projects, whatever they may be.
Here's your big pitch, Andy. Since we're obviously in this movie, all indications say we're jumping straight to Damian, right?
Yeah.
How about we do an HBO Max maxi series where we do like a 3-part episode thing for each Robin leading up to Damian?
Yes. I love
so we
that
get
plan.
a 3-part Dick Grayson, a 3-part Jason Todd, a 3-part Tim Drake, and then a 3-part Damian. And then we'll have the movie. I mean, obviously they probably wouldn't release that before the movie, but you get my point. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would be a really good way, I think, to satisfy the Robin fans out there, is give us the HBO Max series that talks about the other Robins prior to this movie.
I'd buy that for $1. I love it. All right, next message is from Mike Ortego. It says, hey, I just listened to your most recent episode, and you guys mentioned Clancy Brown being in The Penguin. You said to Jamie, it's better to burn out than to fade away. I'm guessing you were referencing Clancy Brown's character, the Kurgan, in Highlander, but Jamie didn't react or respond, so I'm very disappointed at him, but good for you. I'm a big fan of the original movie, and I'm still bummed that we'll never see Cavill play Superman again. I'm over the moon excited for him playing the lead in a Highlander reboot. Also, I was wondering, what are everyone's thoughts on Absolute DC? Personally, I think it looks like absolute garbage. I don't know who this is supposed to appeal to. I can't see old fans wanting to read this, and I don't see it bringing in new fans because new fans tend to get into comics because of movies and TV when they like these characters. But these versions seem so far removed from the traditional versions, I can't see anyone wanting to pick it up. Just my thoughts, and also I'm totally kidding about being disappointed in Jamie. God
Well, I'm
bless.
kind of disappointed that I didn't catch that was a Kurgan reference. But to be fair, Highlander, yes, I enjoy the movie, but I don't think I've seen it more than like 6 or 7 times in my life. So.
Well, Mike says he was kidding about being disappointed in you. I was very disappointed in you, and I'm not kidding.
As you should be. I'm not mad at that.
Yeah. I also noticed that you did not have like that recognition in your voice. I was like, oh, okay, that one was lost.
I flipped through my mental Rolodex. I'm like, I don't know what he's referencing there, but it's something. And I did.
It's okay. It's okay. Now you know. Highlander is one of my favorites. I love it.
The only thing I ever think about when I watch that movie is they hired a Scottish guy to play a Spanish guy, and he's still using his Scottish accent.
And he's supposed to be Egyptian.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Who cares? Sean Connery can do what he wants.
Fair enough.
All right. Next email here is, wait, was there a question in Mike's? I don't think there was. Oh, yeah, the Absolute DC thing. Sorry.
I don't even know what that is, so I can't help you.
I'll just say I agree with Mike. I saw what it is, and I'm like, I just don't think it's for me.
Is this like a new comic series or universe?
I think of it as kind of like the ultimate universe for Marvel.
Okay.
They're doing it with DC, and they're calling it Absolute DC, and it's the Trinity. It's Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, but they're very kind of out there versions, and
like gods and monsters out there, or
not quite. You can Google it. They're just they're kind of weird, and again, but here's the thing: like, it doesn't bother me. Like, no harm, no foul, because in comics you can do weird stuff like that, and for the people who are interested, they can pick it up, but it never is in lieu of like all the other comics that are starring Batman that I can pick up. So, like that's the place, in my opinion, where you can take those big swings. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, no biggie. I don't think anyone really loses from it. So yeah, Absolute DC doesn't really look like something I'm that interested in, but hey, more power to them. All right. So anyway, this next one is Tom Fallows again. He says, hey guys, given Bruce Timm's comments about gender swapping the Penguin due to a lack of female villains for Batman, given that Catwoman, Harley, and Ivy are now somewhat anti-heroes, is there a lack of female villains in Batman's universe? The only ones I can think of are Talia and Lady Shiva. Given this, should there be more villains gender swapped or more efforts to create female villains? Thanks, Tom. So, did you see the comments, Jamie, that Bruce Timm?
I did not, but I think I kind of picked up the gist of what he was saying there.
Yeah, like basically they asked him about the Penguin, and he said, yeah, we were looking, and there's a lack of female villains, and so we thought, let's do it with the Penguin. I'm just going to jump in here. Yes, there's a lack of good female villains in Batman's world. And I've said it before, at least in passing, and it kind of bugs me, is that all of Batman's good female villains have all become heroes.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Pump the brakes right there, because I just want to point this out. Catwoman is not a not villain in this series. So why couldn't they just, keep Harley and Ivy? I mean, Harley's a villain in this series.
Well, sure. If we're talking about Caped Crusader, yes. I'm talking about everywhere else.
Okay, all right.
Comics and other media, Catwoman, she's not even an anti-hero anymore, at least in the comics. She's just a straight-up hero. Harley...
she still makes me want to punch her in the face sometimes.
Well, that's neither here nor there.
Not that I condone violence against women. It's just I can't stand how Tom King writes her is my point. So don't take that out of context.
Right. Harley is often an anti-hero or sometimes just a straight up hero. Ivy is a hero now too. And it's like, so yeah, like if you keep turning your cool female villains into heroes, what else are we going to do? So
Punchline.
yeah, that's why they created Punchline. So at least Punchline remains a villain, and I actually like her a lot. Because it's like, well, Harley's a good guy now, so I guess we have to create Punchline. And even frankly, you bring up Talia. Sometimes Talia's on the good side, not always, but sometimes. So yeah, stop turning the awesome badass female villains into heroes.
I feel like Talia right now is where Catwoman was 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
She was very much on the fence and can go either way. And eventually, Catwoman made that shift. And I think eventually Talia is going to also.
Yes, agreed. So you're right. What is it? Lady Shiva, Punchline, Magpie.
I'm sure there's other ones we're not thinking of. Like, what was it? Red Claw or something like that?
Yeah, but is Red Claw even around? I feel
I'm
like
trying to contribute here, man.
No, I know. No, I know. I mean, this is kind of the point. But
Phantasm.
Yeah. Senora Lola Lasagna. All right. Next email here is good old Stuart from Guernsey. It says, "Hey guys, I'm not sure if you've heard Michael Keaton's comments about the cancellation of Batgirl. I've included them for anyone who missed it. And if any of you guys haven't either, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. He was asked how he felt about the movie being shelved, and he said, no, I didn't really care one way or another. Big, fun, nice check. And then he talked about the directors saying, I like those boys. They're nice guys. I pull for them. I want them to succeed. And I think that they felt very badly. And that made me feel bad. But me, I'm good. For me, this breaks my heart. It doesn't sound like a passion project or the vibe we got from him building up to The Flash, where he always spoke so positive. And for the last decade, it seemed like he really embraced being Batman. These comments make it sound like it was about having fun and money, and he wasn't really too bothered about playing Batman again. I know he's getting old, and it couldn't have been easy playing the Cape Crusader again, but these comments sound like there's no loss whatsoever for him. Anyway, I hope you're doing well, and everything is going smoothly for you and Catherine, Andy. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Stuart. So, Jamie, had you heard those comments that came up recently?
I had not. That was the first time I've heard it.
Yeah, that just happened like a few days ago.
Okay.
But what are your thoughts?
I'll say this much. Keaton's been doing this for 40 years now. Not Batman, but like acting in general. The guy's paid his dues. He's done everything he's ever wanted to do. He's accomplished more than I'm sure his wildest imagination ever thought possible. So, yeah, he kind of has the right to feel that way. He got paid. He had fun doing it. He didn't sound like he had a bad set experience. What's he going to do? Fight the studio about this? Go out there and make a stink when he's still making movies at Warner Brothers? I don't think so. I feel like maybe his comments would have been a different tone if he hadn't done The Flash, or if they shelved both The Flash and Batgirl and he didn't get on the screen with it. I feel like maybe he's got something different to say here. But, since he had that swan song with the character that he played so long ago that all of us still love him for, he got the swan song he wanted in The Flash. So maybe he doesn't feel slighted in that Batgirl didn't get to see the light of day, even though most of us do.
Yeah. I think all good points. I agree with you. It doesn't break my heart. I mean, the man's 72 years old. When you're 72 years old, you're kind of out of F's to give. And I appreciate that he gave an honest answer. He didn't say anything bad. He didn't say anything disparaging. He said he loved working with those guys. He said it was fun to do. But yeah, he's been in the business 50 years. He knows the game. And so, like you take the good, you take the bad. It just seems like he knows how this stuff goes and he wasn't going to let it get to him. So it doesn't really bother me. I still think, to your point, Stuart, he has embraced being Batman and he celebrated it. And to your point, Jamie, he got to do this great final moment with the character in The Flash. And so for Batgirl, it seems like he took it in stride and didn't let it get to him. And I think that's within his rights. All right, one more email here. This one is from Lloyd Wabbit. It says, hey guys, long time no Bat Talk. Andy, enormous congratulations on your imminent plunge into fatherhood part 2. My son was born 6 months ago, and the ability to love as greatly as I do for this little moppet has opened endless doors to happiness I never thought possible. I'm so happy that you get to experience it all over again. As we all know, DC movies have more what if scenarios than perhaps any other property. From Superman Lives to the recently shelved, never to be seen Batgirl, as DC fans, we've all had our hearts battered and torn in one way or another. Of the hypothetical DC what ifs, what are some that you desire to see the most? Here are mine, and I hope they aren't too controversial. Number one, Josh Hartnett in the Nolan trilogy. Christian Bale was great in Batman Begins, but I felt like the quality of his performance and the quality of the trilogy in general dips in the second half of the trilogy. After seeing Hartnett's surprisingly effective performance in Trap, I think he could have brought an intimidation to Batman that lacked in Bale's depiction, as he could have held his own as Bruce. Number two, George Miller's Justice League. Furiosa has been my favorite movie of the year, barely edging out Rose Glass's Love Lies Bleeding and Conor O'Malley's Corey's for the top spot. Fury Road is one of, if not the greatest movie of the past decade. My heart breaks at the promise of a George Miller helmed Justice League movie, as he is master of his craft. And then three, Grant Morrison's script for The Flash. 2023's The Flash is easily one of the worst movies I've ever seen, mainly due to the tonal fluctuations and atrocious visual effects, as well as an immensely grating and obnoxious central performance. Grant Morrison, in my humble opinion, is the greatest DC comic writer of all time, and I would have loved to have seen his intricate, bonkers Flash story unfold as the final DCEU film. What we got instead was a mangled mess that had me questioning my entire fandom. I'm curious what y'all think. Much love, Lloyd Wabbit. Don't hold back on The Flash, Lloyd. Tell us what you really thought.
I feel like part of my soul has been ripped out and stomped on here.
Wow.
I mean, the comments about Bale in The Dark Knight, I don't believe I could disagree more, but hey, everybody's got opinions, man. That's cool.
Yeah. So when you said, I hope they're not too controversial, I think maybe they are.
A little bit, but
yeah,
hey,
I think two of the three of theirs are pretty hot takes. I mean, a lot of people didn't like The Flash, but still, like, wow.
I didn't love it, but dude, worst movie you've ever seen? Come on, that feels a little hyperbolic.
That's way harsh, Ty.
I'm not mad. You know, if you have those opinions, I've got a lot of really hot take opinions about a lot of stuff. So I get it, and I get being in the minority with that stuff. So, you know, if this is how you truly feel, man, don't apologize for it. I'm not mad. I just, wasn't expecting it. That's all.
Yeah, I know. That was that was intense. But exactly, yeah, fair enough. That's how you feel. So, any DC what ifs, Jamie, that stand out to you?
The very first thing that popped in my mind was George Miller's Justice League, and that's mainly because somebody just posted some costume or makeup work on
Martian Manhunter.
On Martian Manhunter in the Real Fans group the other day, and I was like,
yeah,
man, I really would have liked to have seen that. And you know, I love George Miller anyway. He's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Like he's probably narrowly not on my Mount Rushmore of filmmakers. I love the guy that much. So I would truly, truly, truly love to see that. And someday we're going to have to stop making me be lazy and read that script and talk about it on the show. Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2.
Yeah.
Green Lantern kicking off a shared universe in 2011.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, a sequel to that where we get to see a fully developed Sinestro in the yellow garb and ring, since that's a fresh on the mind topic, I'll throw that out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many wish list what ifs. A Wonder Woman 3 with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just keep going and going with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, George Miller's Justice League is a big one, and I think most fans agree. But again, I think it's so funny because when that was going to happen, the fans were so against it. They were so against it because we had just gotten Batman Begins. And now everybody's like, man, I would have loved to have seen that. I thought the Martian Manhunter pictures were pretty darn cool.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, pretty cool. So yeah, that's a big one. You mentioned Superman Lives. Yes. 1,000 times yes. I would have loved to have seen that movie. It breaks my heart it never got made. And no surprising if Tim Burton had gotten to make a third Batman movie with the Riddler. I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
It's a
Go ahead
big
and add
what
that
if.
to my list too.
Yeah. And yeah, to your point, if Zack Snyder had gotten to finish his Justice League story.
Yeah, that's a big old tease waiting for Darkseid and the Forces of Apocalypse. Going to be waiting for a long, long time.
I'm going to be waiting as long as we've been waiting for Sinestro to show up with the yellow ring.
Probably longer.
All right. So thank you for the messages, and and thank you for the kind words about fatherhood, about the new baby coming. The baby is going to be here, God, so soon, in just a couple of months. And
then next thing you know, you're going to be dropping that baby off at college.
Shut up. Shut your mouth.
My kids, who I think should be up to my hip, just dropped my daughters off at college 6 days ago. Still not quite adjusted to it. So,
I can't imagine. I can't. But I mean, just what you said about like it opening up these doors to happiness. It's so true. Oh my God.
100%. There is no greater joy than having children. I cannot express to you enough what it means to me. And, just a quick peek behind the curtain. My wife wasn't even really interested in having kids. Then she had kids and she became the ultimate superwoman of motherhood. So kids change your life in the best possible ways. Truly a gift from God, man. I can't even talk it up enough.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, just yesterday I was thinking, because like Harley, she's 2.5 today, and she is just so fun right now. And every age, some other parent will go, "Oh, that's such a fun age." Right now, this is such a fun age, 2.5, because she is with it enough to know what's going on, and she's aware, but she doesn't have a care in the world. She's so happy, and she just wants to play and laugh and smile, and like, it is the sweetest thing. And she is just so happy that it just like, it fills my heart up.
If I can just throw this piece at you here real quick, the longer you encourage that, the longer it's going to last.
Well, I do. I play with her. With her constantly.
You're a great dad. I'm not trying to say you're not. You're a fan. You and Catherine both are wonderful parents. Wonderful.
Well, thank you.
And that kid's going to have, she's going to have life by the horns. Both of them will, I'm sure. But I'm just saying, the more you encourage that the frivolity and the playfulness and that positive attitude, the longer they're going to hang on to it.
Yeah, it is just, it's everything, like no matter what happens all day at work, it could be annoying, it could be frustrating, it could be stressful. And I get to come home and see that little girl smile and laugh, and nothing else matters. It's the best thing in the world.
100%. 100%.
And to think that I get to do it again is crazy. I still haven't quite wrapped my brain around it, but I can't wait. So yeah, it's exciting stuff, and I certainly appreciate that. Anyway, that's it for the Wayne Manor Mailbox for now. If you've got something for the Wayne Manor Mailbox, you can send that to Holy BatCast at rf4rm.com. But that will do it for our green little episode, Jamie. Thanks for joining and doing something a little random, but I had a good time.
I did too. I mean, it feels like that relief of finally accomplishing something that we've talked about for so long. Because I mean, literally, I think we've talked about this damn near as long as we've been doing this show.
I know.
We were always like, "Oh, we'll do it for this anniversary, or we'll do it for that," and then it just keeps getting biased because of other things happening, and just all of a sudden you're like, here's 3 random topics, choose one. I'm like, we've been talking about this Green Lantern movie forever. Let's get this done.
Yeah. Well, here, you want to cook your noodle? When we started this show, that movie was only 2.5 years old.
I know. So if the conversation had to be like, oh, like a 5-year, a 10-year, no, the 13-year. That was our choice.
That works for me. But
it was very deliberate. That wasn't unintentional at all.
Checking things off the list, and every time I do, then I add 2 more things to the list. So I have a hunch we're destined to do this forever.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, anywhere anybody can keep up with you.
Real Fans groups on Facebook, Letterboxd. My Letterboxd has been pretty thin lately. I've just been dropping like star ratings and not writing reviews. So Scarathon does start in 9 days from as the moment we're recording this. So my Letterboxd is probably going to ramp up quite a bit when that happens. Because again, my plan is for the first part of Scarathon to watch all new or stuff I haven't seen in like 30 years.
That's fun. I can't wait. I mean, like we said at the beginning of the episode, like we're kicking off spooky season with all the flavors and the treats and the soon to be the movies. Awesome. I already told you guys where to follow me. There are also the other shows that I do. We just did a disorder about Strange World, the Disney animated movie that everybody has already forgotten about, but not us. So if you want to hear us talk about that, check out Disorder, Real Fans for Real Movies. The last episode is still the X-Men episode, but we're coming up at the end of summer, which means we'll have to do our summer movie recap. And then I'm sure there will be spooky options. And then Why Not Futurama, which Scotty and I need to get back to, which it's always the case. So check them all out. They're all part of the network at rf4rm.com. But that will do it for this episode of Holy BatCast. Thanks for joining us. Please do subscribe or follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Something else you can do to support us that's really easy, it doesn't cost a penny, is just leave us a nice review. Nice reviews make our day and it helps us out. So only takes a minute and doesn't cost a thing. That would be great. Again, find the Holy BatCast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you've got something for the Wayne Manor mailbox, that email address again is holybatcast@rf4rm.com. Our theme music was created by the talented Gaurav Venkateswar. You can find his work at gvtunes.com. And that will do it. On behalf of Jamie, I've been Andy. We'll see you next time. Same green time, same green channel. I had to. Holy BatCast is not affiliated with Warner Brothers or DC Entertainment. The views and opinions shared by the participants are theirs and theirs alone and do not represent the companies or organizations they happen to work for.
I feel so accomplished now.
You know, 13 years in the making. Or maybe it was, 10 and a half years in the making. Whatever.
Close enough.
Call it what you will. And that way, if we're still around in 2 years, we can still do a commentary with Brendan.
Perfect.
Book it. Book it right now.
Hey, here's an interesting one. For all the years that we've known Brendan, I have no freaking idea whatsoever what his opinion of this movie is. None.
Oh.
So that could be a fun one in 2 years.